And eventually I got into fitness, and it really gave me a new lease on life. It allowed me to heal myself by helping other people.
Welcome to the Empowered Podcast, episode 55. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Empowered Podcast. I'm pretty pumped about today's guest. He's got an incredible story, some interesting things that have gone on in his life that maybe you can connect to if you're out there listening to this. And he's also got a really fantastic project that he is working on and a few incredible hobbies that I find fairly interesting. Today's guest is Ted Ryce. Ted, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Ellery. Thanks for having me on the show. Really excited to be here, man.
You are very welcome. Before we go into some of your background, you've been sharing on Facebook and maybe on Twitter too. I usually see the Facebook updates from you. You are a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. Is that the right word, or just a fan?
No, I've been in martial arts for over 20 years, but the thing that really changed my life was Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I thought it was only 10 years, but I was doing the math the other day. It's been a little longer, but I have a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I've trained with UFC fighters like Antonio Nogueira, and I've trained with Abu Dhabi champion, for any of you, any grappling Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu people out there. I trained with Roberto Cyborg Abreu. He's the number one jiu-jitsu guy in the world right now, who happens to live right down, he happens to have a school right down the street from where I live in Miami.
Do you happen to know do you know her or who Whitney Miller is?
I don't. Who is that?
She won Miss United States, I think it was, in 2012. And I have interviewed her for my show. It hasn't come out yet. I'm trying to time it for one of the next numbered fights. Just trying to do a little bit of strategery there.
Sure.
But Whitney Miller, again, she won Miss United States. I think it's there's Miss America, Miss USA, and she won one of those. I think it's Miss United States. And she's from Texas. And then all of a sudden she decided to go into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And when I interviewed her, she was in Thailand training for something we talked about. But the only point of me mentioning that, Ted, is I thought she would be a cool person maybe to talk to meet, or just to get to know. Because you don't talk to beauty queens that turn into fighters all that often. But
yeah. And
specifically, she threw out the BJJ Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu acronym several times. So anyway, yeah, Whitney Miller, she's a really cool person, and she I don't even know how old she is, but she's traveling the world fighting and does fitness, and she might be she's like, I don't want to say the female version of you. That sounds kind of weird, but she does fighting.
She's like me with boobs and long hair. Cool.
Exactly. I don't know if that'd be a good mental image or not, but anyway, I saw your Facebook updates about that, and thought I would make that connection. I've been meaning to, throwing her name your direction, but
cool. Yeah, I have a ton of respect for women who get into the fight game. Is she the one who said something about learning self-defense as a woman? Got a lot of crap for it.
That maybe. I asked her something along those lines on my show. It hasn't aired yet. It will by the time this episode goes out. But she says she has gotten a lot of crap from people for a lot of different reasons. So maybe that was one of them.
Yeah. There's a big thing going on where the rules of the traditional roles of gender are kind of breaking down, and they have been for a long time, but a lot of people give women crap for lifting weights or doing something like that. And personally, it just doesn't bother me. I think people should do whatever they want to do as long as they're not, hurting other people or whatever. So no, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's a fantastic thing. I think women need self-defense more than guys. So very cool. I will definitely talk to her. Would love to talk to her. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, she's a really cool person, and we'll kind of jump around. I want to talk about some other things that I have learned about you, but we're talking about this fitness, this gender stereotype type of conversation, and I think that's a perfect introduction into what you're doing online right now, Ted, and that is the Alpha Man Project and the Alpha Man Project podcast.
Yeah.
Tell us, where did this come from? I mean, I don't usually say this on my podcast, but saying just Alpha, is it Alpha Man or Alpha Male?
It's Alpha Man, and
Okay.
yeah.
So that's a pretty ballsy thing to put out there. I'm going to have the Alpha Man Project. Where in the world did that come from? Why did you start that? Where did this project idea, where did the idea come from? Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, okay. I'll give you a little bit of backstory about me. I was always into exercise. We can get more into some of the crazier things that I've been through in my life, which I've been through a lot. So I don't want to take up too much of your time talking about it, but I got into fitness when I was 22 as a personal trainer. I was pretty lost. I had suffered some big tragedies, which we can go into if you'd like. But I got into fitness. It kind of saved my life in many ways and got me to take care of my health. And for all the talk about self-help and all the psychological ways that we can improve our health, improve our mental state. I think that people kind of overlook the more physiological ways of doing that. And that is to say, eating healthy and exercising. And that really got me, it really saved me in a dark time in my life. And I started doing it for other people. I started doing it, helping people transform their bodies and their lives through exercise. But as I started getting into it, I started seeing there were problems with, like, my clients would show up to our sessions and they would train with me and they would be great during that 1 hour. But there's 168 hours in a week, if I'm not mistaken, and they're spending maybe 2, 3, 4 at the most with me. And then the rest of the 160 something hours, they were on their own. And that amount of time, they were losing the focus. They weren't eating the types of foods they wanted. And to make a long story short, there was more to the picture than just telling people what to do when it comes to exercise and nutrition. And that's how I got into personal development. And then the whole alpha man, because I was one of these guys who really wanted to become cool, or I wanted people to like me. I wanted women to like me. I wanted to date the types of women that I wanted, and I wanted to really kick ass in my profession. And I learned that just pumping up in the gym and looking pretty was not really getting me as far as I thought. And so I started getting into all this personal development stuff. And through actually Eben Pagan, before he became known as Eben Pagan, he was David D'Angelo teaching quote unquote dating advice. And most of the dating advice was really about getting your act together as a man. And it really floored me when I learned about it. And fast forward to now, it's a bold name, I guess. And it really turns a lot of people off, probably as many as it turns on, it turns off. But to be honest, I just wanted something that kind of reflected a personal development podcast and personal development concept that was a little badass, And to bring it back to even the Brazilian jiu-jitsu that we talked about, Ellery, I have a video of me competing in my first jiu-jitsu. And then I have some footage of me competing a few years later. That first one, my first match, I won it in 30 seconds. But if you see the look on my face, and I placed third, by the way, I didn't do that great, but I won my first match. And if you see the look on my face, you see my demeanor. I looked really aggressive. I looked really, it was like, are you scared or are you angry? You couldn't really tell. I mean, I went for it. And when I won, I stand up and I was like, really aggressive, right? And then I fast forward a couple years to this to this later event, and you look at me, and yeah, I'm a little, I'm a little anxious, a little excited, but I am quiet. I am there to take care of business, and it's none of that hooting and hollering and aggressive look on my face. I was just there to take care of business, and that was that quiet confidence. And I think a lot of guys don't get that. It's like that, and so I wanted to start a platform to help guys, to be more badass, to have some personal development, but to do it in a way that kind of embraced them as men, and that made them stronger, that makes them into the strongest version of themselves, not just physically, but psychologically as well.
You had mentioned before, Ted, that there had been some challenges in your life as of just in the last several months here. And would you mind sharing a little bit about your background, maybe going back several years to where you had said, a few minutes ago, you had said that you had realized fitness, I think it was, that had saved you from something. And that seems to be a common theme about people who are very fitness focused. I know when Amy Clover was on my show, I'll put her episode in the show notes, can't remember what it was, but how fitness had really helped her come out of depression and what it has done to change her life. Is there something like that fitness has redirected your path from?
Yeah. I've actually had quite a bit of tragedy in my life. I lost my biological mother when I was 14 years old. And actually a couple years ago, I lost my sister to suicide. But the thing that really set me down a very, very dark path for a couple years really was when I was 19. My 9-year-old brother was kidnapped and murdered. And I don't know how much detail you want me to go into it, but I will say it became national news. And he wasn't just kidnapped and murdered, but he was raped. And after he was murdered, he was cut into pieces and put in flower pots, and it became national news. Like I said, my parents crusaded. My stepmother, and this is when I was 19 after my mom died. So my father and my stepmother crusaded for rights for children and protecting them from sexual predators. And it became a huge story for a while. And this year, we're in 2014, this is August now, but at the beginning of the year in February 12th, that person who kidnapped, raped, and murdered my brother was put to death in the state of Florida. And my father and I had front row seats to that execution and watched it happen. And
wow.
Yeah. So to rewind about what you had said regarding fitness, I got into that. All happened when I was 19. About a year later, when the trial occurred, that's when I really hit bottom. And so when I was about 20 years old, and I just fell into a hole, a metaphorical hole, and it took me a couple years to climb back out of it. And when I didn't know what I was doing, I was bouncing around from job, and I dropped out of school. I couldn't hold down a job. And eventually I got into fitness, and I got hired. I started right around my 22nd birthday, and it really gave me a new lease on life. It allowed me to heal myself by helping other people. It allowed me to take care of my health through exercise, learning how to exercise in a more productive way. And I learned all about nutrition, and just that started this whole journey of putting myself back together. And it's been a long, I gave you the abbreviated version. There are some really other bad things that happen but I'm more than happy to talk about them. But I don't know how deep deep and down into the rabbit hole you wanted to go.
As a side note to this, Ted, and to give everybody some context, this is like August 4th or something. We met for the first time, Ted and I did, on July 17th. So right at, was that 2.5 weeks ago?
Yeah, something like that.
And we'd never met. I had seen his podcast floating around. And when I was speaking at Podcast South Florida, he came. I don't think it was just to hear me, but just to meet with a community of podcasters and things like that.
It was in part to see you, Ellery.
There you go. Yeah, it was all to see me. I was signing autographs. No, just kidding. But the connection that podcasting allows people to have is ridiculous and awesome at the same time. I mean, if we had met just on the street or at the gym, I don't know how long it would have taken to get some of these stories to be able to share them with each other, much less hundreds or thousands of people that we might not ever meet, Ted.
Yeah.
And it's incredible to be able to experience that as someone standing here behind a microphone, as someone who has met you in person, and just as a bystander to someone with such a, I don't even know the right term, just, I don't know if incredible or crazy or shocking or whatever the story that you've touched on here, and how it has impacted who you are today. And it's an incredible experience to be part of that and to be a witness to you sharing that. So thank you, Ted. And it's interesting is not probably the right word either, but from a psychological standpoint, that's where my background is. It's very interesting to hear that and how it has shaped your personality and who you are today.
Yeah, it has, and I appreciate all those things that you said, and absolutely, podcasting has changed my life through the relationships that I've built with fellow podcasters like yourself, and also having the amazing opportunity to interview all these cool people that I've talked to. And you'll be on my podcast as well. And yeah, I'm just very grateful to be a part of it. And just something very quickly. I'm initially part of the fitness industry, but over the years, I've kind of gotten more and more distant from it, because it's not as you would look in and think that, wow, that's a lot of healthy people there. And I really don't think psychologically a lot of them are healthy. I think a lot of them are struggling with money. I think a lot of them are, struggling to be professionals. They're struggling with their passion. They want to help people, but they don't want to learn the business aspects. And I just find that entrepreneurs, and especially the podcasters that I've met, it's a healthy group of people, just a really cool group of people. And I'm just glad to be hanging out with and talking with all the new people, the new friends that I've made.
Good. I'm sure people who have known me for a while say Ellery has his own flavor of crazy, but I would agree. It's a very helpful and supportive community. Now, before I forget all of the things that I wanted to ask you about your story, Ted, let me go back and just, what if someone, your history is very unique, but if someone was going through something like that today, if they had just had a loved one pass away, or a brother or sister pass away, what would you tell them to, they're just a couple months after attending a funeral, and they're just, how do I pick up the pieces? How do I I move forward and become this positive person that Ted's become? What would you say to that person who might be listening to the episode right now?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And I've had a lot of experience, unfortunately, dealing with that. But number one is you have to allow yourself some time to grieve. But the number two part would be you need to get back in action as soon as possible. You need to start taking care of yourself with exercise. You need to start making sure you're eating good quality foods that are giving you enough of the right nutrients to fuel your body. And you need to be getting great quality sleep. Not good, but great. And the thing I would like to say about that is you can do all the affirmations you want in the mirror. You can listen to all the podcasts you want. But if you're not addressing your physiology, you will most likely never get to that point where you're feeling as good as you could be, or getting over that tragedy as fast as you could be, or growing from it as powerfully as you could be. And the way I look at tragedy, I like to take away I like to get really cold about it and just look at it as like stress in your life. And how do you recover from stress? You know, the things that we talked about. You need to fuel your body properly. You need to make sure you get good quality sleep, and you need to exercise. And and that will change your physiology. It will change your hormonal physiology. It'll change your brain chemistry. That's what we know exercise. We know exercise does this. So you need to do that. The third thing would be you got to have an appreciation of the fact that, you know what, let me say it like this, because someone asked me, you know, I did a lot of interviews for media, for like local media. I've even been on national news talking about my brother's situation. And someone had asked me, Ted, do you ever wonder why you know, in that really media sort of voice? And I was like, no, I don't. I mean, there was a point where I did, but I don't. Why don't I? Why don't I think about it? Because number one, I'm just one person in the world. There's been so many terrible things that have happened to people in the past. There's terrible things that are happening right now in other places of the world. You have to realize your place in the world and realize that, you know, everybody will experience tragedy, and you need to put your tragedy in perspective, whatever it might be, whether it's something worse that's happened to you than what I've been through, which I'm sorry if that's the case, but you know, we all have to get through it. Or if it's something that's maybe not as intense or shocking of a story. And by the way, I'm not trying to take away from anybody's pain, right? Because we all feel what we feel. But I will say this, it doesn't matter. We need to find a way to push on and putting things in perspective and realizing that there's other people who are going through something worse than what you're going through, you know, or even at a bigger scale. It's important to keep it in context. And if you don't care about what's going on in the world or to other people, then you're kind of a jerk anyway, right? You need to care. Like, and I will say this, I mean, you don't have to dedicate your life to saving other people, but you know, you should care. And if you don't, there's a real problem with that.
Compassion.
Yeah, having compassion. Absolutely. And I will say this too, when you do have compassion for other people, it's an opportunity to help other people, right? And heal I said I kind of healed myself by helping other people. I did that through personal training. You can do it through a number of ways, but finding a way to help other people and not dedicating all your time because you need to take care of yourself first, but finding ways to help other people can be huge. Now, that could be being a personal trainer like me. It could be doing public speaking for and talking about what you've been through. It could be being a big brother or big sister. It could be feeding the homeless, whatever it is. But and just to give a bit of maybe some perspective on the whole helping other people thing that maybe your listeners may not have heard about before, is that I interviewed Steven Kotler, and he's written a book on this concept of flow, right? This state that we get into where all these neurochemicals are released and we basically become a different person. We grow and learn better, and it's the state of feeling our best and performing our best.
It's like being in the groove.
Exactly.
I've heard of that. I forgot his name, but I'm glad you mentioned it.
Yeah, and he would be a great one to interview, by the way. He's a very, very great speaker, very interesting, and there's a lot to learn. But he talked about helper's high. He's like, through helping people, you help yourself. You get this helper's high. And that's another way of getting through your tragedy. Another part of that would be challenging yourself. One thing that I don't like about therapy, because I have gone to therapy to talk about some of the things that I've been through, especially with my brother, it was focusing on the past. It was focusing on things that I couldn't change, right? Although I could change my perspective about how I saw those things, and that's important, I couldn't change actual events. What I like to do is I like to focus on the things that I can change, how I can develop myself, how I can challenge myself to grow. And that could be, I'll use my own personal example. I was scared of fighting, so I got into martial arts. And even when I was in martial arts, I was still like not very confident in my ability. And then that's why I said Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu changed my life, because it gave me a level of confidence that nothing had ever given me, no other thing that I've tried. And, I competed in it, and it was very stressful and it was scary. But afterwards I was like, you know what? I lived, and I feel like a different person. Now, you don't have to do that. You could do public speaking. You could, start just finding ways to take risks in your life to challenge yourself.
Always getting out of your comfort zone.
Exactly.
But Ted, before we go into some of the questions I try to ask everybody, I want to circle back to one thing you said. And I want your advice. How do you go from good to great sleep?
Good to great sleep.
How do we sleep better?
Yeah, excellent question. And okay, number one, forget about how much sleep you should get and how many hours. Just focus on getting the best quality you can. How do you do that? I'm about to tell you. The first thing I'd say is stay away from computer lights, your cell phone light, your iPad, your iPod, whatever you stay away from those types of lights 2 hours before you get to bed. Okay. Uh-oh. Now and by the way, I'm saying this, and this is from actual research, and it's evidence-based. In other words, this is not internet marketing, fitness internet marketing where it's, there's actual evidence for this. And it affects a hormone in your brain called melatonin, which is something maybe you have heard of, or maybe you've seen it in the grocery aisle as a supplement. It's a hormone in your brain that gets released towards bedtime that helps you fall asleep and stay asleep and get good quality sleep. Make sure you stay away from those lights right before you get to bed. Really hard for guys like you and I to do, Ellery. And all your internet.
So that's what. Yeah, is that why people say read a book instead of work on your tablet or your phone or something?
Exactly.
Interesting. Okay.
And so you can break the rule, but you're going to feel the difference.
Awesome. Well, I think that'll be our number one tip there. Put the technology down, but a couple hours before you go to bed. Because honestly, that's probably a pretty good idea. That might give you a better chance to what's the word I'm looking for? Reconnect or circle back with your spouse before you go to bed.
Yeah.
Instead of
being on the phone.
I have to admit, I was watching an episode Orange Is the New Black last night, right before I finally went to sleep.
Well, were you watching on your iPad, your iPhone?
I'm an Android person, so it was on a Galaxy tablet, little 7-inch tablet.
You know what? I'm sorry, but I got to go. You use Android? I'm sorry, Ellery. It was nice talking to you. No, I'm kidding. But I have drank the Kool-Aid. No, it's just that the fact that they all kind of work together. But the iPhone photos have really got to fix the photos. The Androids take really nice photos.
They do, and everybody who says, "Oh, it all just works together," I don't have any problems with my Android. I think it is the Kool-Aid there that are like, "Oh, but your music is everywhere." I use Amazon. I wrote a blog post about it. It's about creating your own personal cloud. I all of my stuff is everywhere. Amazon Music, Google Hangouts, my Box account. I got 50 gigs of storage on there. I have everything that I need everywhere. So anyway, that is, I know it's pretty awesome. So
yeah.
Anyway, go Android. I always say upgrade to Android, and people really that rubs people the wrong way.
I don't sweat the small stuff, but I have been getting more and more annoyed with iPhone, so perhaps I'll look into that eventually. I wanted to give two more tips for this sleep thing.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
The other one is to black out your room, meaning black out. Like I cannot see my hand in front of my face, right? With the door closed and the lights off. Get blackout curtains, invest in them. Again, we're designed. We live in this amazing modern world full of technology that can keep us up all night, entertained and having a great time. However, that will take a serious toll on your health if you do that. Mm-hmm. We're designed to not have that light come in, and that has to do with the same reason, the melatonin. And don't believe me, just try it. And the third thing I would say to ensure a great quality night's sleep is to turn down the AC to an uncomfortably cold temperature. I use 69 just because I'm trying not to pay so much money because it's so hot here in Miami Beach, and so anyway, that's it's important to keep it really cool. And just to add a little bit of incentive for trying this particular one, some research came out looking at, it was I think 4 weeks long, looking at a group of men who they put in who they did this experiment with, where they had the guys sleep at 66 degrees and found that it made them burn more calories at night. So it increased their metabolism at night. And I could go into more depth, but it would probably sound like a bunch of nonsense about brown fat, but it will improve how many calories you burn at sleep. So there you go.
And I know there have been studies about your levels of creativity too, with it being warmer, slightly warmer than you would want it versus slightly cooler than you would want it. And I don't remember which one gives you a boost to creativity, but there's a lot of interesting science that comes out of that. And like I said, I can't remember any of the articles, or I'd link to them. I think Buffer has shared them on their blog, but it's been a long time. So that's interesting that you burn more calories, and it raises your metabolism when sleeping cold. I don't like sleeping when it's cold, and but I definitely don't like sweating while I'm sleeping, having it warm either. So I think I'd probably prefer it to be cold, maybe. I don't know. Although I've slept outside camping when it's been 30 degrees, and that's not good either. your metabolism. I think my metabolism stopped completely because I was a popsicle by the time the sun came up. But anyway, Ted, being on the Empowered podcast, and I know you mentioned, and thank you for listening to episodes of the show. What does the word empower mean to you?
It means a few different things. The first thing that comes to mind is that realizing changing our mindset and realizing that whatever it is that we want to achieve, we can do. It just has to do with what actions you take. So instead of blaming external circumstances on why you don't have the type of life you have, or the type of relationships with women or men, whatever gender you may be or whatever you're into, you start to take responsibility, and knowing that you can create whatever it is that you want in your life. You can create your life. That's what being empowered, and also knowing what you want in your life, because too many people go after the wrong thing, and that's not if you want to make a bunch of money, but you don't really, but it's not for internal reasons. You got to really know what you want. I think an empowered person knows what they want in life. They know why they want it, and they understand, hey, I need to put in the work to get there, and I need to have persistence and not give up when the first little mishap, the first little failure occurs.
I like that. You have to know your goal to be empowered, plus you have to know that you are able to go after it. I like how you said that.
Cool.
Ted, what was the last movie you saw?
The last movie, you know what? I can't remember the last movie I saw. I remember the last movie I really enjoyed watching.
Let's go with that then.
How about 300? The Rise of an Empire.
Oh, the second one. Yeah, that one was pretty good. I like that actor. The guy that
Sullivan Stapleton, guy. Yeah.
Yes. Did you ever watch the show Strike Back?
Love that show.
That show is it coming back?
I don't know, man. I watch it on Vudu. Like I said, I don't have cable anymore, or I haven't had cable in years, actually, many years. And I tried it for a year, and I had DirecTV, and I wanted to strangle them. If they were a company and a person, I would put them in a jiu-jitsu hold. You know what I'm saying? So I got rid of them, and I watch everything on Vudu. So I have no idea, but I hope it does, because it was a great show, very entertaining.
It was, and I actually like DirecTV. I've never had anything bad about this. So I'm kind of surprised, but that is very unfortunate. So you're very fitness focused. You've got the podcast. You're training other people. How do you unwind and relax? What does Ted do in his downtime?
Yeah, well, how do I relax? I love to take walks on the boardwalk. I actually do yoga as well. That may not sound so badass or alpha or whatever, but I think part of for the uninformed, right? Because I really believe that is part of that's part of what we need to do to be powerful, to be empowered, Ellery, is to make sure we have a balance of very stimulating activities and also relaxation. So I do yoga. I also love to travel. I love music, and I love to read.
Oh, what are you reading right now? Fiction, nonfiction?
I haven't read a fiction book in a really long time. I'm reading The Prosperous Coach by Steve Chandler and Rich Litvin.
You like it? I've never heard of that.
I love that book. It is inspiring. It's also very educational, meaning you learn things and you can go apply them. And I'm fascinated with coaching because and it's something that I want to get into, because I think exercise is very limited, and a lot of people I think coaching is what people really need. And then some of that other stuff like exercise will naturally fall into place when people figure out why the hell they want what they want in life, Yeah,
I was talking with, I think it was Chris Cerrone, and coaching for me has been one of the more difficult things, because you're giving advice to where people change their life, hopefully for the better, but you're saying do this or don't do this, or have you thought about doing it differently? But instead of, eating vegetables, that that's a healthy thing to do. Going for a walk, that's a healthy thing to do. But when you start getting into the advice of like change how you're approaching this type of situation and everything is subjective, it's weird. It's a lot of pressure.
I can imagine. I'll tell you, one of the reasons why I want to get into it is because I've been doing it anyway for 15 years in between sets, and it's not enough. People come to me because they want to get in better shape. Why do they want to get in better shape? Because it's not because of health reasons, although that is occasionally, but it's usually because guys want to be in there because they want to look better for women. They want to
look better. They want to live longer.
Exactly.
Health by itself is really kind of, you could almost say non-existent. Lower blood pressure.
Yeah.
But you live longer. You look better. All those kinds of things.
Even living longer, it's not. People want instant gratification. What is it that they really want? They want to. Yeah, exactly. They don't want to
play golf for more years.
Yeah,
they want that. Yeah, living longer. But playing golf until I'm 80.
Exactly.
Yes, that's what I want. Quick question before I ask you my final question, Ted. I was on the island there for South Beach, Miami Beach, and over there by, what was it? That restaurant there on the very southern tip.
Smith and Walensky?
Yeah, so we were there. You might have seen some of the pictures that I posted on the blog. Was I right where you live or close to where you live?
Smith and Walensky is I'm kind of towards the other end. I'm on 19th. You were on like first. I'm on 19th.
So far north?
Yeah. It's not that far, but it's 19 Miami Beach blocks, which are kind of small.
Okay.
So yeah. Oh, you were very close. Sure. I can get there in, less than 7 minutes.
We ate at burger place, The Big Pink, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I had 1.5 pounds of crab, and it was delicious. Not the real expensive one, but it was like 100 yards from the water on, was it Collins or something?
Ocean Drive?
Maybe that's what it was.
Ocean Drive's right on, like you see the ocean literally from being on Ocean Drive.
Yeah, it's where all the cars are parallel parked, and then there's like some little grass, and then the beach.
Yeah.
It was like Troy's Crab Shack or something. Joy's.
Cool. I have not been there. Was it good?
It was very good. And anytime I can get 1.5 pounds of crab, I love crab. That's a lot, but when you get like a leg, it's not worth it. And that's what you end up getting here in Texas. You don't get the 1.5 pounds. Yeah. So anyway, Ted, my final question is, what is one tip or piece of advice that you can give someone who maybe it was the Ted of 10 years ago or 15 years ago, who's in that position? What's one tip or piece of advice that you can give that person in that position in their life?
Wow. I would have to say the most powerful thing that would have helped me is some type of mentor, is finding someone, or it could be could be coaching. If you're in the position to hire someone, it could be, if you're not doing coaching, fill your mind with the right ideas, like listening to your podcast, Ellery. And I'm not just saying, people might go, oh, yeah, you guys both have podcasts. Guys, and ladies, that's why we do it. We do this because so you don't have to go and flip on the news and see the 17 to 1 negative stories to positive. So you can start getting inspiration in your life and seeing what's possible. So you don't have to get stuck in that sheep mentality that so many people are stuck in. Get the right ideas in your mind, because so many, I don't want to use the word poison because it sounds a little too intense, but a little too conspiratorial. But there's a lot of bad information out there making you feel bad about yourself because, you don't have a certain type of lifestyle, or that you don't make enough money, or you don't look a certain way. Forget all that stuff. Listen to podcasts like Ellery's, like mine, other things, and read books, listen to audio books. Get the right information in your mind, because that's the software. Your brain is the hardware. The software is the information that's coming into it. So make sure you keep listening to things that inspire you, that educate you. And even if you're going through a rough time, keep pushing forward, keep doing the right things, and it will work out. Okay, it really has to do with you and not what's going on around you in the external. It has to do what's going on internally.
Awesome, Ted. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. It was a pleasure meeting you in Miami, or whatever little town that was outside of Miami, and getting to hear your story and sharing that with my audience. And if someone wanted to connect with you, thank you for sharing that piece of your life, or connect with you and say thank you for being on the Empowered Podcast, where can we send them?
Yeah, go to alphamanproject.com, and I'm sure Ellery will have the link up, but it's spelled just as it sounds, alphamanproject.com. No spaces or anything like that. And yeah, I would love to hear from you. If something inspired you that I said, or you resonated with my story, I'd love to hear from you. I love connecting with people.
Perfect. Well, Ted, thank you again for hanging out with me today. It was a pleasure having you on the show.
Likewise, Ellery.
Man, have you ever been talking to somebody and they tell you something that is so far out of what you expected to come out of their mouth? That's what happened when Ted started talking to me about some of the things that had happened with his brother and his family. And I've mentioned several times in some of the post show messages just what an interesting thing podcasting is, and how it allows you to connect with that. And I don't want to harp on that, but it really is something that's incredible. I never would have learned this stuff about Ted. And if you are thinking about starting a podcast, just hopefully this episode may push you in that direction if you're already thinking about it. But if you're not, don't worry. There are plenty of other ways that you can connect with people. Speaking of which, I want to mention the North Austin Online Entrepreneurs Meetup that I'm starting. And here's some background on that. When I got to talk in Florida at the Podcast South Florida Meetup, I was so honored that they would welcome me into their community and into their close circle of friends. And I'm really grateful to Jarrett Easley and Laura Algueta for helping me get connected with that opportunity. And so I wanted to be able to create that kind of incredibly nurturing and encouraging environment here in the North Austin area. If you are in Texas or within driving distance of Austin, listen up, because I want you to attend this. So if you're a blogger, a podcaster, an online entrepreneur, or you want to be, if you're looking at starting those kinds of things, if you haven't done it yet, don't worry. I want to see you there too. I want you to come out to, tentatively, it's at the La Madeleine at the Round Rock Outlets. And I'm not going to give all of the details here because I know not everybody's in the Austin area, but go to empoweredpodcast.com/55. That's for this episode, /55. All of the links will be right there. But there's a link there that'll take you to the meetup page, and it's a completely free event. I just want to connect with people who are wanting to do something interesting, who are getting out of their comfort zone, trying to build a community online and build a business online. It's like the Wild West. That's a bad analogy. Maybe it's like going out into space. It's not the Wild West. That brings up stage coaches and shooting and things like that, but it's more like going into space that there's just endless possibilities. But it can also be a very lonely place. We sit behind the microphone and we sit at the keyboard and we try to connect with people online, and sometimes it works. Online is great, but in person is better. And the North Austin Online Entrepreneurs Meetup is just an opportunity for you to connect with local and like-minded people. And by the way, if you aren't doing that, wherever you are and listening to this, if you're not connecting with people who are on the same journey as you, they may not have the exact same destination, but if you're not connecting with people who have the same or similar goals, just freedom, taking back your independence and self-reliance, whatever your goal is, fitness like Ted, or starting a podcast like I was a year ago, if you're not connecting with people who are on the same journey, you're really missing out on a level of connection, a level of encouragement, inspiration, and support that will really help you take your project and your goals and make them a reality. So go to empoweredpodcast.com/55. The link to the meetup is there. I hope to see you there, and thank you for listening to this episode of the Empowered Podcast. I'm your host, Ellery Wells. We'll see you next week.